Malachi Moreno has sustained an injury while playing with Team USA, but honestly, it's not anything Kentucky fans should be worried about at all.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we're going to talk about what's going on out in Colorado with Team USA. Mark Pope making his coaching debut out there, Jasper Johnson, and unfortunately, Malachi Moreno sustaining a light injury. It's not anything to worry about. We're going to talk about that, the injury bug, how this Kentucky team may have a little more depth than other teams in the past, and why, if one cat goes down, everything may end up being just fine. Also on today's episode, summer practices have started, and there have been some standouts already. According to reports, there seem to be a lot of different really fun things going on, both with the game and with the personalities that this team has surrounding it. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app. You can create an account. You can use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show, and if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So Malachi Moreno is out there right now in Colorado alongside Mark Pope and Jasper Johnson, who are currently, I believe, practicing. They're going through training camp with the 2025 USA Basketball Men's U19 team. If I'm not mistaken, they are practicing for the World Cup, which is happening later in June here. It's scheduled for June 28th through July 6th in Switzerland. Finalists will be announced on June 16th before the official roster is finalized by June 21st. That group competing on the world stage to bring back a gold medal. So the way that it works is they've got all these kids out there to possibly play for Team USA. And it's, I think, 32 different kids. Jasper and Moreno were out there playing, and they're cutting the list of kids down to get the best roster, I assume, to go perform. So they cut it down from 32 to 18, and KSR, Jack Pilgrim, wrote a note earlier today about Malachi Moreno, and I'll just read it verbatim. By now, you probably heard the news that Jasper Johnson made the cut from 32 to 18, while Malachi Moreno did not. It doesn't add up on paper. Moreno solidifying himself as the second-best center in the event and putting together consistently strong performances since he first arrived. That's why it should be noted that Moreno picked up a minor injury Monday morning, and his departure was a mutual decision, the Kentucky center wanting to play it safe and get back to Lexington to rejoin his team, rather than risk making it worse. His play warranted top 18 status, but his health did not, unfortunately. Now it's up to Jasper to keep the momentum rolling for the Cats in Colorado Springs. And as far as we could tell, just based on what's being put out on social media, based on what reporters who are actually there covering this get to see, Malachi Moreno actually played pretty freaking well, just all around. And I hate to see, it's kind of like what happened with Aaron Bradshaw a couple of seasons ago, where it's one of the players that you expect to be a contributor down low in this front court, and they sustain an injury, and then you start freaking out, okay, what on earth is Kentucky going to do? Thankfully, this situation is dramatically different than that. So the reason I wanted to start the show today by talking about this is to tell anybody out there, if you are looking at the word injury in any sort of report with a Kentucky Wildcat, you really got to dig into the context of this season, and you got to dig into the context of the injury first before you start making broad, sweeping conclusions about either the player themselves or what Kentucky's season is going to be. Thank goodness this is only a minor injury, and on top of this, you have to note, you got to read closely, his departure was a mutual decision. This was not something where they were telling him, okay, you didn't play well, get out. It was not okay, you kind of hurt yourself and didn't play well, get out. It was hey, you played very well, but because of the injury that you sustained, and it's probably honestly Moreno talking more to Team USA and talking more to whoever's there that would be cutting this down, it's probably more of hey, I don't feel comfortable risking any sort of further injury here. I'm just going to play it safe, and I'm going to move on back to Lexington and rejoin the rest of my team, who is currently going through summer practices. And again, there have been some really good reports on that, specifically from KSR, that we'll get to here later on in the show. But I think this makes a lot of sense. This does not worry me. This does not concern me. I think Moreno is going to be okay. You just got to read closely and realize he played very well. It's not something that's going to be too serious. He's coming back to rejoin the team, so he's coming back to likely practice here, rehab whatever he's got going on. I've not seen anything about what specifically the injury could be. Well, we can speculate all we want. If they release some footage of practice later on in the next few weeks, maybe we'll get an idea if he's got some sort of brace or something on him. But overall, I think it's okay that we're looking at this and going, okay, well, it's fine because of the situation. The injury is not severe. In the past, we've kind of been left in the dark to wonder, okay, what on earth is going on? How long is this going to take? Yada, yada, yada. But with Moreno, it seems pretty clear cut. And even Pilgrim said in his byline, I think Moreno wasn't a traditional cut. He would have made the list of 18 players because of just how well he performed. The other thing I want to point out here, let's say, for argument's sake, that Moreno did go down, and it was clear he wouldn't be ready to play by mid-January. Let's just throw that timeline out there. Maybe even early February. He would not be available for the Wildcats because of whatever injury he sustained in this hypothetical scenario. You have to look at the rest of this roster and it's at least still be okay, if not confident, in the rest of the personnel that you have, which really does, I think, make you excited about what this team could do this season, because last year you kind of had the 1-2 at every single position, and when guys went down, you had to kind of like shift things around, and it was kind of awkward. You had guys playing point guard that weren't traditional point guards. You had guys playing down low that at power forward that just didn't really fit well there. They would have been better either at the 3, or they're just not a traditional 4 that works well defensively. And now you have somebody like, let's say, Moreno going out, and you go, okay, well, we've got one of the best defensive centers in the nation. We also have our backup center that's going to be returning this year that's only going to get better. At least it looks like he's going to improve to some degree in Brandon Garrison. You also have Andrea Jelovic from Europe, who is going to be a very fun 4-5 because he's like 6'11". And then you also have Reese Potter, who's 7'1", coming over from Miami. So if you really got to dig deep, you got him as well in the bag down low. This is a good situation for Kentucky. If one player goes down, you're kind of like rotating through the gumball machine and seeing, okay, who in our bench depth can we pull from? And it's always going to be a pretty sweet tasting gumball because all these kids can play. I'm very excited to see how Kentucky plays through this season if they are able to maintain that health. And even if they are not able to maintain that health, I think that you got a lot to be optimistic about because it's next man up and the next guy up. He's pretty exciting. Thank goodness this was not a serious injury that was sustained to either Moreno or Jasper, because I think Jasper plays at a more important position to stay healthy. Maybe not because of what Otega could provide there, but also I think that Jasper is a more traditional 2. Anyway, we can get into that whenever the season gets closer. Actually, that's not true. We'll probably talk about it a lot as we get closer to the season. But thank goodness this wasn't an injury to Jasper. Thank goodness this wasn't a serious injury to Moreno. Thank goodness we're not living in that hypothetical scenario where we have to wait until January and we have to get through midway through SEC play. And okay, I'd like a 5-star freshman center back to at least play 10 minutes off the bench and contribute in a lot of different ways. There's also, and we may talk about this whenever we actually get more of Moreno, I think I was right about it, and this is not me saying, oh, I'm right, I'm smart. But I think I was right about what Moreno could be for Kentucky. As far as I guess a Janai Broom type player who early on in his career doesn't provide a lot of face-up value. He is a really high-floor big around the basket where he can be efficient. He can be a really solid dunker. Or not dunker as in like just like a basic term. Like he can play the dunker spot well. He can be valuable in pick-and-roll situations. He can be a really good defensive player. He can be a great rebounder, like high floor across the board. But there's not like one thing that he like truly excels at. And then you see in year 2, he starts to develop a little bit more of a handle, more face value. He gets to be more of a traditional playmaker in Mark Pope's system. I say traditional because it's like kind of what Mark Pope wants to do. It's not a traditional playmaker in the sense of like what's going on across basketball, but you get what I mean. You could start to see the path to a All-Americans, a possible, not National Player of the Year, but maybe SEC player, who knows, maybe National Player of the Year type kid where he's able to round out his arsenal. He knocked down a three, if I'm not mistaken, during this Team USA. I think they were playing some sort of practice or some sort of game earlier. But you see that type of trajectory, I think, with Moreno, and I'm very interested to see what he's able to do, especially once he comes back and he's fully healthy. From Team USA, what he's able to do in practice, I should say, this offseason. I want to continue along talking about practice, talking about the standouts. We've got some really good reports about the character of some of these guys. Some interesting quotes from Otega Oweh about how you kind of need to maintain your innocence in a way, which is kind of it's a really lighthearted kind of transition. Also, at the same time, a lot of competition here in these practices so far. Before we get to that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. There is literally nothing like the NBA playoffs. It's happening right now. The intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds, it's the kind of atmosphere you must experience live. And this year's matchups are already delivering if you want in. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop the closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. I just told you guys, I think recently, about how I was going on Game Time looking for tickets to Kentucky versus Gonzaga. I got a great price for a great seat that's going to be a really, really good view. The views on the app are already great. I'm so excited to see what it looks like in person. I've already bought tickets to different college football events later this fall through Game Time. It's the place to go. You don't want to go anywhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. It's the best place to go. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. You get $20 off your first purchase, which is a pretty sweet deal. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, continuing along here on the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Ladies and gentlemen, we have officially hit summer practices. I am so excited to see how this team battles it out with each other because of, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, the depth, the physicality, I think the aggression that this team is going to bring because of the new players that they have that kind of had that hard hat mentality. We'll talk about one of them here in just a little bit, but Jack Pilgrim, of course, KSR and company, all the different other outlets out there getting to cover different interviews and things like that between Oweh and Garrison and Jasper and all these different kids that are participating in practices. And there have been some really interesting quotes coming out of some of these early day one summer practice sessions. Brandon Garrison talked about the energy, the goofiness on off the court. He's been seeing that a lot that's the biggest difference between last year's group and this one, is that they're a little bit more, I guess, lighthearted. And Oweh added on to that, saying that they've got a lot of characters, a lot of young guys who are really excited to be here. He said that's always fun because that's going to show in the games and in practice. You always just want to have fun, too, because it's basketball. It's a kid's sport. You want to try and keep the innocence. This is a reminder to you, me, and anybody out there that takes any sort of sporting event too seriously. Reality check. At the end of the day, and this is an annoying thing to hear. I mean, I probably wouldn't want to hear this if I was really passionate about something and my team was losing. At the end of the day, it's just a game. It's a sport. It's a beautiful sport. It's an incredible sport. I think it's an art form at the highest level. I think there's also beauty in the imperfection of college basketball, which I think is a whole conversation for another time. A lot of you would probably agree with that. But at the end of the day, it is just a sport. And to be able to take joy in competition, to be able to take joy in practice and getting to be a team, to come together with a group of individuals and to be able to point towards something bigger, it's a good, lighthearted, enjoyable thing. Now, there are times and moments where you need to take things seriously. If you want to excel, you're going to have to kind of pour yourself into certain things emotionally in a serious manner, but also overall just being able to keep lighthearted, to kind of keep the bond together. The fact that everybody's having fun and being goofy and cutting up and enjoying themselves, I think is going to mean a lot more whenever the serious moments come later on down the road where you have to execute in certain spots. You have to be able to go and get a bucket or get a stop. That bond that you're creating now is going to pay off in about 6 or 7 months. This is great. I think these are two really good, short but good quotes here from Brandon Garrison and Otega Oweh. The newcomers seem to agree as well. They talked about how there's different characters and just kind of like how different guys are really funny on the team. Jack Pilgrim noted in his article they're not beating the goofball allegations. For Jasper saying, for some reason, everybody always says that I'm the funniest. I don't know why. Everybody says me. I'm the funniest dude on the team. It's just funny when we're around each other. Moreno added, we just sit there and laugh a lot. We just sit there, joke around each other. We make each other laugh. The lighthearted approach is, like Pilgrim notes, and I just noted, it's working. It's off-court chemistry. It's building a bond together that's going to lead to, I think, more success whenever you do things on court that are important. Like I mentioned earlier, yes, basketball is a lighthearted kid sport, but at the same time, there are going to be moments where you're looking up. It's the SEC tournament. You want to be able to make the quarterfinal. And gentlemen, you got to be, or you want to make the championship. And gentlemen, you got to go get a stop right now if you want to have any sort of chance of doing that. They also talked about how things have been going on the floor. Moreno said that they have multiple guys that can come and produce good minutes, talking about the depth, the chemistry here. He talked about how he knows Coach Pope has a plan. His staff has been able to work everybody at a high level, fitting the roster with which groups go best with each other and things like that. It's great to have depth. We're going to need that to be able to win a national championship, as I have already stated. And then they asked a really good question about who has been standing out and kind of what the competition has bred. And this was the quote from Moreno. Everybody has been playing well. We've just been doing our thing. It's been very competitive. There's been some trash talk here and there, but that's kind of part of the game. I think we should be having fun while we're playing. Someone, though, has to have turned heads more than the others, as Pilgrim noted, and so they asked in the interview, okay, well, who has actually stood out? And there's two guys, and one of them I am kind of trying to will into existence, him being like an all-SEC type player and just significantly improving in efficiency-wise. Jasper Johnson said his backcourt mate, Jalen Lowe, has been the guy that has turned heads the most. He said, I really like his game. He's very crafty, being able to pass and also score. I'd say Jalen was sticking out. And Moreno said Mohamed Diabate. He knew he was strong, but he didn't know he was that strong. He's able to use his body to his advantage. That's something that really stood out to me. Jalen Lowe and Mohamed Diabate. We saw what Mark Pope did with the new transfer roster that they had a season ago. I expect the players that they have brought in this year to perform just as well as some of those guys did, if not better. And because of the strengths that these kids have that last year's team just simply did not possess, various players having those things, whether it be defense, physicality, just strength in general, speed is really important to me. I think that this team will improve. I think that there's nothing this team can do but go up. And I probably, who knows, if they fall apart, I'm setting myself up for failure here talking about this. It's okay to be wrong. But at the same time, I mean, you look at this on paper, no fan of college basketball looks at this roster and says they're going to take a step back from where they were in year one under Mark Pope. Guys like Lowe, guys like Diabate, the chemistry, the engagement, the joy that these kids seem to be getting out of each other. I think it's all going to lead to success. And I'm very excited to see how it goes with the rest of summer practices. Of course, we'll be breaking that down here on Locked On Kentucky, and that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK, follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.